The sealed wing of the Therrak Embassy Annex had one occupant and one maid. I was the maid. I'd been cleaning that wing for 2 years by the time anyone thought to ask me about it. The annex sat at the north end of Ostend Station, wedged between a freight routing office and a decommissioned water treatment bay. Most of the building was marble floors and tall windows, and diplomatic silence. The sealed wing was the part nobody visited. The dragon was called Eseth, iron dark scales with a copper thread running the length of her jaw, and a wingspan I never saw open, but could estimate from the way her wing joints folded against the floor. She'd been brought in 2 years before I was assigned. A territorial clash near the Therrak border worlds had left her paralyzed from the neck down. The embassy physician used the word unrecoverable. The diplomatic staff used the word husk. I didn't know what word to use. She was very still and very large and very warm, and she smelled like heated stone. My job was simple: mop the marble, wipe the window ledges, check the water basin, change the underpadding beneath her torso. Nobody told me to talk to her, and for the first 3 months I didn't. I cleaned around her the way you clean around furniture that's too heavy to move, carefully and without thinking about it much. I don't remember the first time I said something out loud. It was probably about the mop. It usually was. I'd been talking to myself in empty rooms for 30 years. Embassy work is quiet work, and quiet work makes you either very silent or very chatty with nobody. I was the second kind. I narrated my mopping. I commented on the weather readings. I told the supply closet what I thought about the new floor wax. So I talked around Eseth the way I talked around the mop bucket, not because I expected an answer, but because the silence was large enough to need filling. 3 months in, I noticed her eye. I was wiping the window ledge nearest her head, and I turned, and her left eye, gold, with a dark vertical pupil, the iris cracked through with copper veins, was open, tracking me. I stopped. She didn't. The eye followed my hand as I lowered the cloth. It followed me when I stepped left. It followed me when I crouched. "Well," I said, "hello." The eye stayed on me for a long time. Then it closed. I told the embassy physician the next morning. He checked the monitors, checked her charts, and told me involuntary eye movement was common in neurological cases. The word he used was reflexive. He said it didn't indicate awareness. I went back to the sealed wing and mopped, and when I turned around, the eye was open again. After that, I started talking to her. Not around her. To her. I told her my name. I told her what day it was. I told her about the freight schedules and the argument in the commissary about whether reconstituted broth counted as soup. I told her about my daughter on Pelin and the twins who'd just learned to walk and the letter I kept meaning to send. She never answered, but her eye opened every time I came in, and it stayed open the whole time I was there. And after 2 weeks, her tail moved. Not much. A twitch at the tip, the last 6 inches lifting off the marble and settling back. The first time it happened, I was mid-sentence, and I stopped and looked at the tail, and then at her eye, and her eye was looking at me. "Eseth," I said. The tail twitched again. I told the physician. He said it was a muscle spasm. He was patient about it. I brought a stool the next week. I sat beside her after the mopping was done and talked, and she lay there with her eye open and her tail occasionally twitching, and I chose to call it listening. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I'm a maid, not a neurologist, but I've cleaned enough rooms to know the difference between a room with nobody in it and a room with somebody in it, and the sealed wing had somebody in it. I started staying longer, an extra half hour, then an hour. I brought a flask of tea and read supply manifests aloud, because they were the longest documents I had access to. She seemed to respond to the ones with cargo tonnage figures. Her breathing slowed when I read those, the way a person's breathing slows when they're concentrating. The embassy staff thought I was getting odd. The junior diplomatic attaché, a young Therrak named Orath, dark-horned and copper-tailed, compact but draconic through the shoulders, started appearing at the corridor entrance during my extra hours. He never spoke. He watched for a few minutes, then left. I assumed he was checking that I wasn't making a mess. 6 months in, Eseth made a sound. I was telling her about the twins. They were walking properly now and destroying everything in reach. And she exhaled through her nostrils in a way that wasn't breath. It was a low, resonant hum, felt in the marble through the legs of my stool more than heard. It lasted 2 seconds, then silence. I sat very still. Her eye was open, her tail twitched, and the hum came again, low, warm, sustained. It vibrated in my sternum. I didn't tell the physician. I didn't tell anyone. I just came back the next day, and the next, and the next, and she hummed every time I sat down, and I talked, and we had whatever you call it when two people are keeping each other company, without any expectation of it going anywhere. By the end of the first year I knew her rhythms. The hum when I arrived, the tail twitch when I said her name, the way her breathing deepened before the hum, as if she were gathering it from somewhere far inside. The way her eye closed last, after I'd already reached the door, watching me leave. I didn't know anyone else was watching. The Therrak Matriarch arrived on Osted Station in the second year. On a morning I was already behind schedule, because the freight lift had broken, and I'd carried the mop bucket up 4 flights. I didn't know she was coming. I didn't know what a matriarch was, not properly. I found out later. She was the eldest living elder of the Therrak bloodline, iron dark and vast, the kind of dragon who entered a room, and the room rearranged itself around her. I was mopping the sealed wing when the doors opened and 6 Therrak walked in, and behind them came a dragon who had to lower her head to clear the frame. I stopped mopping. The mop suddenly seemed very small. The matriarch crossed the floor to Eseth. The delegation held back. Orath was among them. He was looking at me. The matriarch lowered her great head to Eseth's, and Eseth hummed. Not the quiet hum I knew. This was the whole room. The marble buzzed under my shoes. The windows trembled. The water in the basin rippled outward in slow, even rings. The matriarch held still for a long time. Then she turned her head, slowly, the way something very large turns, and looked at me. "Sarah Malk," she said. I hadn't introduced myself. "You have been speaking to my granddaughter," the matriarch said. Her voice was deep and unhurried. "For 22 months. "Yes, ma'am," I said. I was still holding the mop. "We have known she could hear," the matriarch said, "since the injury. The physicians told us the body was severed from the mind. They were wrong. The mind was severed from the body. She has been in there the entire time." The matriarch's gaze rested on me with a weight I could feel settle across my shoulders. We did not know if anyone outside the bloodline would notice, or care enough to stay. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. "Orath has filed a report every week for 14 months, the matriarch said. "He tells me you brought a stool." "She seemed like she wanted company," I said. The matriarch was quiet. Then she spoke a single word in Therrak. Low, formal, shaped around consonants I couldn't reproduce if I tried. Orath lowered his head. The delegation lowered their heads. "It is your name," the matriarch said, "in our tongue. It means the one who filled the room when everyone else had emptied it." She turned back to Eseth. The delegation filed out. Orath paused at the door and inclined his horned head toward me. Not a bow, but the kind of nod you give someone you've been watching for over a year and have finally been allowed to acknowledge. Then they were gone, and the sealed wing was quiet again, and the sunlight came through the tall windows the way it always did. I stood there for a while, then I wrung out the mop, finished the floor, checked the water basin, and changed the underpadding. When I sat down on the stool, Eseth's eye was open, and her tail twitched, and the hum rose up through the marble into the soles of my shoes. I told her about the twins. They were running now.